welcome to the Code Show. Today we're going to be speaking with Dianne Greyson of the Ethnicity Pay Gap Day. Why do we need this day? How was it established? And how will it affect you in creating parity within the position of your role? So to answer this, we're bringing on Dianne. Dianne, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, not at all. And in fact, the whole point of this is to create a mapping exercise of all the solution providers that we have within the African Caribbean community so that we have absolute clarity about who to go to for what. And I think it's been such a white elephant in the room that we might earn 15 to 25% less than our English counterparts. And now it's a problem. Obviously, last year, George Floyd's murder, that sparked something which is the African gene that has been suppressed for so long that it's called many of us to action. And you were obviously one of those people. So how did your journey start in establishing the ethnicity pay gap?
Well, it started 3 years ago with an article that I had seen about the ethnicity pay gap. And I was so infuriated by it, the fact that yet again, we are in a situation where we have to get to a point to have to say, well, why is this happening to us? Why is this happening to us? So with the communication I had with some others, I was talking to them and thinking, what could we do? So without giving you the long story of this, I had a moment where I just thought, okay, maybe we can do something like Me Too. So they created this Me Too t-shirt. So I created the Ethnicity Pay Gap t-shirt. And I did it personally for myself just to say this is solidarity. Yeah. And I shared it on LinkedIn, and then suddenly people started coming and say, oh, I'd like this. So I had to go and find it, find a printer to do the replication of the t-shirt. I wrote articles about it. And the more I delved into it, the more challenging I recognized the situation was. And I just felt that I had to do something about it.
And do you know why it's so beautiful to hear that? From the simple seeds of getting that spark, the minute you got the download, you were called to an action. And a lot of us, I think that it's so insurmountable to actually establish these things. It's why it's beautiful to hear the human stories behind it. From a simple motivation that you were called to action in a particular area, created a t-shirt that created a buzz where there was a kinetic effect that attracted other people to you who were all beneficial to the process of creating the actual day. But then it's more than a day, it actually becomes powerful as a movement.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the process of, after you've established articles and people start to follow those? Because what you do, you make yourself the authority inadvertently, don't you?
Yes, exactly, inadvertently.
But there's not many of us, I don't think, that will jump forward initially. It's when people put a battery on your back and say, you need to do this. So tell us a little bit about that process and some of the people who might have inspired you to move forward, even though you may have wanted to resist.
I suppose a lot of it came from my own self, determination to want to make a difference. I just felt that I needed to do something. And I think, as I've recalled to you a little while ago, 4 years ago, you wouldn't have even seen me on anything because, you know, I was doing my thing, you know, helping and supporting people without putting my head up above the parapet. But I just felt this was a situation where I had to do that. And through the support of, you know, I spoke to my husband, I spoke to my mum, and they, you know, they were very pleased that I wanted to do it, and they got, you know, they got behind me to be able to make this happen. And I have my colleague who I run a business with. She was very, very supportive in being part of it. She bought a t-shirt, and, you know, she started to talk to her daughter about it as well. And, you know, it's about spreading the news, the thoughts, the ideas of what this is all about, because at the end of the day, it's no point in me keeping what I've learned to myself. I've got to let everybody else know. And I've also got to be able to give them the strength to find out and see, you know, see for themselves what is going on and how these, you know, how this situation can be changed. And from that standpoint, I then organically started to speak to organizations like Fawcett Society, Equality Trust, their focus is maybe for Fawcett is more to do with gender, but they did understand why I wanted to do what I was doing, and they were fully supportive, as was the Equality Trust as well. And Lord Woolley, he's supporting the campaign, which was fantastic, because he's been behind driving things on the government level for quite some time. So he recognised that I was trying to do something, and I think from an individual level, it's important to have individuals who can speak to people, not feeling that, oh, that person is higher than you. I'm just an average person trying to make a difference.
But not to take away from what you're saying, never underestimate the power of your spirit. And I think the gentle resistance that we've always shown has always come from people who had that humility to consider themselves average people. But you're not, and I'll tell you that. And I've been watching you for some time. I understand that you have the spirit of collaboration without being asked. It's not necessary. It's something that is innate. And unfortunately, in this time, it's not necessarily normal. No. There are some extraordinary people doing extraordinary things and collaborating. And I think the universe has no option but to get out of your way, first of all. You will attract delivery partners at the highest echelons, like Lord Woolley. And the inevitability of change, but being in our favor this time, is there. I don't think we've ever felt that a fully positive, self-determined change is there for us. But
yeah, I agree.
There's an appetite there, and I think we can taste it and almost feel like we can touch it.
Yeah, indeed. I think this is a good time to capitalize on this drive that people seem to be, they have their eyes open. And I don't think it's not, I mean, George Floyd was a big catalyst, but I think things were happening. But I think now it's sort of like propelled forward now. More, there's more need, more desire. And, the bit you were talking about, Dean, about collaboration, people recognize it's important to collaborate, because if you don't collaborate, you cannot speak in one voice.
Absolutely.
And we have different issues, but those issues are of the fact that we're not getting what we should be getting, and we need to bring that all together to be able to let everybody know that this is not right, and we need to do something about it.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important elements you touched on is the collaboration. I just came from an institution, which is a very old British institution, where you think there'd be so much resistance to working with us, talking about us being ethnicity specific and our specific needs and requirements being heard in the room. And there was zero resistance. They had actually been looking for and desiring this relationship and welcomed it. And I think a lot of us would be so surprised if I could have been a fly on the wall in this meeting 5 years ago. Number one, I wouldn't have believed the Dino Kai that was in that room, just like you said, the Dianne that's here today. And two, that these institutions are welcoming these conversations and that they actually want to adopt our recommendations. So
it's about time.
Yeah, absolutely. Time. What are some of your experiences in talking with these organizations?
Probably I'm talking and nobody's listening. Is what is happening. And I've always said, when people have asked me, oh, well, or they've said to me, I don't quite understand it because clearly there's an issue, etc., etc. I said, well, they see me as an individual. I don't necessarily have any standing, even though, as far as I'm concerned, I do. But they may feel, oh, well, I'm not anybody of any importance to listen to. But, they've missed a trick in that they should, the fact that I'm making an effort to make something change, they should be listening.
Yeah.
But I can't make them listen. I will do my best to tell them what I need and what's going on, but I'm not going to knock on a door that won't open. I've got to move and keep going and find those people who are more understanding and can see it for what it is, which I, as I've said to somebody today, it's a human rights issue. We have a right to be treated and literally paid fairly. And that to me is the end of this. There is no, there's nothing strange about it at all. So we should really be pushing as much as possible. And, I'm sure we will get onto this a bit later, but, the government are literally dragging their heels on this.
Yeah. I think some of it comes down to a conversation we had the other day about the difference between visionary leadership and operational leadership. And operational leadership deals with what's there today. And I think anything that will break the status quo just seems too much. But visionary leadership will always see the benefits. So I think even here today, there are many professionals watching this. I call you, those who have a desire to speak with Dianne, to reach out, because what she's seen is the future. Before these things explode, it's always better to get ahead of it, to create initiatives that actually enable. So if you're an early adopter, keep watching and listening to the issues. In fact, let's not wait for the end. Let people know how they can contact you now. And I'll also include all of those links in the broadcast, because what we want is delivery partners who actually have a very strong desire to roll out the initiatives that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, there's a website that I created, ethnicitypaygapcampaign.com, that's got all the information you need in terms of issues around ethnicity pay gap, how you can support the campaign. So it's all there. And also there is some information about if you feel that you are one of those individuals that might have had a disparity, there are some points that you can go through in terms of what you can do to be able to check that. And also for companies, I've created a model that they can look at to help them to go through it. So it's all there. So it's a matter of going to the site and having a look. There's also, we have a Twitter account as well, which is Ethnicity Pay UK1. And we also have a Instagram as well, which off the top of my head, I can't remember fully. But I will make sure that, we'll make sure that it's all there for you.
I would contribute one more piece to that, because I'm privy to know of our professional Black networks. There's a number of you, and you're in all of the corporate companies. Remember, this is an issue that specifically benefits you. So I would tell any heads or even members of the professional Black networks to, one, share this interview as widely as possible with your members, share the links, and definitely to reach out to Dianne in contacting her with your stories, and even as a speaker to come down, because what I understand is a lot of the professional Black networks have days like the Google Talks and TED Talks.
Yeah.
And is number one, they're stakeholders inadvertently, whether they realize or not, in Ethnicity Pay Gap Day, and also just to learn and become true stakeholders and share it in order to capacity build for the next Ethnicity Pay Gap Day. So I urge all members of professional Black networks to reach out to Dianne. And because I know Dianne won't, because she's so beautiful and humble, I'm going to be a little cheeky and ask you guys to volunteer with your services for Ethnicity Pay Gap Day in any way that you can, based on what you do within your roles. Because one, it requires advocates, but there is so much to do when you're actually establishing an initiative, and it's not the role of one person. And until the resources come on board, it's greatly appreciated for you to get involved. So within that cheeky ask, what kind of roles would you require help with within Ethnicity Pay Gap at this moment?
I think a lot of it is more to do with social media, marketing, that sort of thing. Because as you said, one person can't do everything, but I actually do everything. I have to do, I have to post out the t-shirts. I have to do all the sharing of the social media. I have to do all those types of things. And somebody who could maybe speak to organisations to be able to get them to support the campaign I have to try. I do speak to organisations and try and get them to put their name to the campaign. And I think some are reluctant because they think it's a political issue, which is not. It's not a political issue. It's a human issue, and I think people need to recognise that. What would be great now is that we've just recently launched a survey, which is going to be part of a research that we're doing. And the research is about ethnicity pay gap and how that affects Black women.
Excellent.
And I chose that because through my count of the ethnicity pay gap, it focuses on BAME, that term that not many people like.
We get conflated with everybody.
And it's very homogenous. And
absolutely, and we're not.
Exactly. I'm a Black woman, and I just thought I'd like to try. And I've spoken to quite a few Black women who have told me that they have, had pay disparities. So I had asked some organisations to help me to do it, and I didn't get any response. So I just said, I'm going to do it myself. So myself and a very good friend of mine, we're doing it together. We're going to do the research. So the first stage is the survey. Yeah. And then once we do this, which is out now, and then after that, we're going to be interviewing some of the people who are willing to be interviewed. And once we've done that and we've analysed all the data, we'll then produce a research report, which will hopefully come out probably summertime, and depending on how much people we get through the doors. But it's really important that we get a lot of engagement, because I recognise that, we may be perceived as two Black women that doesn't have any credibility. So, we want to make this research robust.
Absolutely.
That anybody who wishes to challenge will have to keep quiet, because at the end of the day, we've done our due diligence. We've done our due diligence. We've done everything appropriate to make sure it can stand on its own. Because to us, we feel that this information can be helpful to us Black women, but equally can be helpful to organisations as well. So everybody wins if we get the participation of others.
Okay, so 2 things. Here's my caveats. You must stop with the self-deprecation, because I know the level that you operate as a professional. And so the first thing, we'll do an article on the AdPack website, firstly, that includes the links to the survey and why, and share that across all platforms, but with all the professional networks that we know. Also, in sharing the link for the T-shirts, I have a challenge for you, professional African Caribbean ladies, to order a T-shirt, do a selfie, and tell us your story in 1 paragraph as you do the survey. So all of these materials, I'm sure, can make up a collage which will be beautiful and show the scope and scale of our professionals and all the various industries that we're in at the highest echelons of our careers within these industries. So challenge, order a T-shirt, take a selfie, send it back to us, and do the survey. So
most importantly, please. I'm not distracting you. It's complimentary. So, and may I also add, it's not me being, I'm not being negative about myself, but I just know how people can see you. You know what I mean? Yeah. The first thing they see is this, and then they think, it can't be any good. Well, I know, I know I can stand on my own credibility and integrity, and that of my colleague Susan. We can stand up and say, we know what we're doing, we know why we're doing it, and we want our work to be respected.
But do you know why we tend not to get into this so much, Dianne? Because we work in people's companies and we are actually doing the work, but not getting credited with high caliber research and high caliber work. So first, we speak to each other as a family. We just circumvent all of that perception because we know it to be a nonsense. And the minute we stop acknowledging it, I think it starts to disappear because it's an illusion anyway. And these are things that are used to maintain the disparity in pay gaps anyway. So the minute that we start to just brush it off because it's a nonsense, we just advance. And
exactly.
I'm surrounded by professional African Caribbean women that I can rely on that do things at such an exceptional level. I don't know why we didn't do this stuff sooner and collaborate at these levels, because we're talking about, when we amalgamate all of the talents, corporate level companies. It's just that, here's the thing, because we don't have the liquidity, we often mistake it with the caliber, and then it gets conflated. But what is happening now is a lot more of our reports, research, and census are being funded by corporate companies. So as we are now talking about the economics of it, look, corporate social responsibility heads, if this is something that aligns with your values, please reach out to Dianne in Ethnicity Pay Gap. Because number one, let's look at companies like the accountants, KPMG, Capgemini, Deloitte Touche. You are uniquely aware of what everybody earns because you have done these back to back, and you understand to the minutiae what we contribute to the GDP. If this is something that sits alongside your values, fund the survey. Let's now endorse the work so that it becomes a mainstay, a national mainstay, year on year, so that, please God, in 3 years' time, we can just disband your organization.
Exactly.
Because it's achieved this objective. And the key is to achieve that objective of parity. Because why would anybody have a pride in having those kind of disparities with professional workers who are working at their optimal level in the same role, performing at the same rate? It just doesn't make sense. Even for jealous, hateful people, it doesn't make sense. Nobody wants to be perceived as Lucifer sulking in his basement, covered in sellotape and peanut butter.
Well, and also, if you've got a pay disparity, guaranteed you've got other issues going on.
Absolutely.
And that's a guarantee. There's no way that if there's the disparity will not sit in a silo on its own. There are other things. So I always say it's great when people report, but it's not just about reporting it. It's about looking at it and seeing what is it showing you and how are you going to mitigate against it. Absolutely. What are you going to do? What are you doing to resolve it? And
this is why it's important. There's a reason that I mention corporate social responsibility, because me and my brother colleague Gwenton Slowly went to a report that was put together from a vision of a young man, Joel Dunn. Exceptional, amazing young man. And it was sponsored by Deloitte Touche. Now, this report was on the effects of the lockdown on young people, African Caribbean people, and teachers. When you saw the caliber of teachers involved, how exhaustive the report was, you said something that was key just now, that it doesn't sit in a silo, that there's that there's a pay gap. Remember, psychologically, in terms of trying to tread water right now, there are so many knock-on effects that lead to the stress, and a report will give you all of the impact of those pay disparities so that we have a clear picture of what it looks like. And it's not just a draw on the individual, it's actually a drain on the company, and then it's a drain on the country because it affects the GDP and the performance rate. So it literally doesn't make sense that on the one hand, you think you're saving, but you're not, because if performance goes down, staff wages don't go down, do they?
Exactly. So, sorry, I was going to just add, also, one should note that people who are affected by the ethnicity pay gap are also the same people who are dying in their hundreds of thousands because of COVID. You know, all the people that they're saying, Black, Asian people, are the ones who are affected the most. These are the same people that are affected by the ethnicity pay gap. So there is some correlation going on.
There's a huge correlation, and I think that government initially tried to conflate the issue to encourage us to vaccinate quicker. But what it actually is that the cultural mindset of those who are at the bottom of the rung of the ladder when it comes to wages feel compelled to work on the front line based on that lack of options that you have when you are essentially broke. And then they weren't protected. So the myth that we were genetically more inclined, susceptible to the virus was a nonsense. It's an economic issue where, based on that pay gap, we feel compelled, because if we lose those meager roles, we're really in trouble. And unfortunately, that costs people their jobs. Sorry, their lives.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people need to understand that the ethnicity pay gap is not just about the fact of the disparity of money. It's that what that effect that has on the individuals and their families, etc., etc. So, you know, from that point, that ethnicity pay gap point, bigger things then do come of that. So it's quite important that that is addressed as soon as possible, because we can't really continue down this road, because we need to be able to galvanize ourselves and make sure that we are getting what we're supposed to be getting in terms of pay, to be able to grow as a stronger group and be able to do the things that we need to be able to do, which will then contribute to the UK anyway. That's my thought.
Absolutely. I make you right. And this is why I always talk about our contribution to the GDP, because there's something inherently insidious in institutional racism where it becomes self-defeating and they don't actually realize it. And I always say, if you plot for one grave, plot for two, because you're killing yourself at the same time. And I don't think they realize that even if you are hiring for stats or for tick boxes, you are still hurting yourself in terms of the impact that you get out of us. Because African Caribbean people are highly resilient, we're incredibly innovative, we are visionary, and when we have the correct circumstances, we're able to execute all of that at an optimum level, which will give exceptional performance for an employer. Absolutely. However, when you get the opposite of that, you're going to get somebody who is definitely touching on mental health issues, possibly physical illnesses that manifest from stress, bullying, not being able to cope, which are issues that we're not talking about, but are more white elephants in a room, usually, that accompany the ethnicity pay gap as well. So it sparked a thought with me. You said something that was very important, and it was that it seems political. And I hear this a lot. Every time we talk about making improvements specifically for African Caribbeans, somehow it turns from an employment issue, an education issue, or a health issue into a political issue where none of the people are local councillors, advocates, or politicians. And I'm not sure where this transference for specifically African Caribbean becoming political issues comes from. And I'd like to explore that. What are your feelings when it's thrown up to you?
That you're just trying to gatekeep, because, you know, there is no evidence to say that, you know, this is a political issue. It's not a political issue. It's not to do with politics. It's to do with people. And so, therefore, you're putting an unnecessary barrier to our progression to be able to make the change. So that's how I see it. And, you know, I quite frankly just ignore them and just keep moving on. You know, I've had some communications with the Qualities department, and they've said what they've had to say. And I've just said, well, I don't believe anything you're saying. I'll just carry on anyway. And that's how I view it, because you can't just stop just because they say it's political. It's not political, and nobody's going to convince me it is.
Absolutely. You know, the more you speak, the more downloads I get. And Kemi Badenoch's name just popped into my head.
Yes.
As the Equalities Minister, whom I think is the polar extreme of what an Equalities Minister should look like within the role.
Yeah.
Does the same gaslighting with that policy of, it's called benign neglect. When you look at a problem and say, the problem will take care of itself. Well, it doesn't, because problems require policy, and policy requires resources in order to apply the policy. Yeah. So when Dawn Butler is speaking with her and she uses the term racial gatekeepers, is what is actually happening. And we can't allow our advocates, that is my smoke alarm.
Whoops. That's what happens when you go live.
What happens when you go live? So we can't allow our advocates to be castigated into these places where they're termed reverse racist and all of the nonsenses, which is what happens, which doesn't exist because we don't have any power. Advocating on behalf of our own, I think a lot of people are being emboldened by characters like Kemi Badenoch, unfortunately, and Tony Sewell, along with the report, and saying that the formal reports are disagreeing with what you're saying. However, the importance of you taking a survey will show the polar extreme in that these are real people with real cases. And I'm more inclined to listen to this because it doesn't have the manipulation aspect of government in the desired outcome I
don't benefit from this. The benefit to me is actually producing it and sharing it and getting people to recognize it exists and hoping that I can help people to make the changes that I'm hoping to see. There's nothing else.
Yeah. So in summing up, what do you want the environment to look like in 12 months' time?
That might be even too short, but I was.
No, please, you take as long as you.
No, I know, but I just want them to. I want more discussion and more acknowledgement, not just messaging that this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and I want the government to be able to give us confirmation that it will be mandatory and it won't take another 2 years for that to happen. It will be done immediately. And furthermore, not just the mandatory reporting, but they must also evidence what they're doing about it as well. So there needs to be the reporting and the action. And I'd like to hear more people say to me, Dianne, since you did what you did and the Ethnicity Pay Gap campaign, my pay has changed. People within my organisations have listened and they have adjusted my pay. That's going to be great. That's great for me.
I agree. So within that, again, I'd like to call on our councillors and MPs to get behind that. I think it would be great to produce an open letter from Ethnicity Pay Gap Day.
I did already.
That's beautiful. Yes. We would love to get a copy of that, to get that open letter endorsed by MPs, politicians, those in the House of Lords, to really enable this change to take place as quickly as possible. We're moving into a new dispensation, which is the digital dispensation. The old dispensation is like a man who's been shot in the forehead, who has a belly button in the middle of it, is dead. We just don't know yet because they haven't made the crossover. It's coming. And we can't afford to be behind, because where society is going will be made a permanent underclass. And based on the fact that there isn't room to maneuver in any unofficial ways, because cash is going to go. It's going to create criminal classes, and that's not good for anyone. So in order to circumvent that, let's do something that goes against the grain institutionally. And this is to abandon the institutional inequalities that have always existed around us. And when I say us, I'm talking about African Caribbeans, from we landed, today, and tomorrow. Is a continuous thing. Let's put an end to it and be a part of that. Be on the right side of history. So, Dianne, do you have your URLs in front of you?
Do I? I don't at the minute, but
no problem.
I mean, I can remember.
We'll put them in the links.
Yeah, I can remember some of them, but if we put them in the link, then everybody will have them and can gain access to it. But I hope that this will go some way to getting some more people, more new supporters, people to get involved, start having those conversations within your organisations. Is one of the things I try to say. In your networks is a great starting point, because that's a place of support, and then bringing it out to the business. Hopefully that will then galvanise, and then you can see differences being had, which is quite important.
I'm quietly confident. So, coming on board as a delivery partner, what day can I have all the information from you so we can put it out in an article, and then we can start getting the survey out into the world?
Tomorrow.
Beautiful. So, ladies and gentlemen in professional Black networks and all roles of employment, as of Monday, we'll get the article out, circulated across all professional and employment networks. Please fill it in. Please share it. Please do the challenge. Purchase a t-shirt, take a selfie, and give your testimonial, and fill in the survey. Please. Survey first. Everything else is a bonus that we appreciate. It's been great having you on, Dianne. You are doing powerful work. And when you say ordinary people, you're not. You're exceptional. I know, because the people that we have in common, who you support, who we're in the network of, speak very highly of you. And I know how humble you are. And the fact that I know you have no desire to do this show whatsoever, and you are here, I really appreciate. And the role that you've taken to come out more publicly. And I think all of us appreciate it. And the best way we can show that appreciation is by filling in the survey. And please, volunteers, those in professional networks, if you're moved based on what you've overcome personally, and you don't desire to see any more generations coming behind you and suffering exactly the same, please volunteer your skills and your talents to Ethnicity Pay Gap. You know what you do. You may be able to bring your special brand of magic that Dianne hasn't even seen would be a factor, but you have a vision of how you can contribute and just make this a more robust and powerful entity, so that when we go and speak truth to power that has no desire to listen, is such an irresistible proposition, they feel compelled.
That's what I would like, please.
Thank you. This was a Code Show. Please share this episode, like, subscribe, fill in the survey, interact with all Ethnicity Pay Gap media, follow them, share their posts, and understand that when you are doing that, you are doing it for yourself. This is a Code Show. We're finished. Thank you.